we reshifted, refocused, and began talking about effective workforce strategies that were meaningful in economic regions throughout the state and implemented through local partnerships. And once we started using that language, it really began to take on a life of its own. The legislature became very interested in how they could, for their own regions, for their own constituents, begin to mold the way public policy was moving activities in particular areas. So we started to see legislators writing bills that had elements of sector strategies, but didn't embed the philosophy of sector strategies within the bill. So at that point, we started doing technical assistance with those legislators. So I can't say that we purposely went out and attempted to get legislation in place. We saw a move that direction and an opportunity to influence how that legislation was being formed. And what we were able to do was introduce sector strategies, introduce the concept of a workforce intermediary, and have that built into that legislation. So it didn't just call for the formation of a green-collar jobs council for an opportunistic economic focus, but we morphed it into legislation that says the state board will adopt sector strategies as its framework for approaching California's economy. And the first sector initiative will be around green-collar jobs.
It starts with the leadership of the Department of Labor and Industry and the Governor's Cabinet. I think if they can be convinced that the employers are critical partners and that those employers need flexible funding. So one of the things that we were really looking at in the beginning was how do we engage employers in an easy way, and by utilizing state budget funds, that was one way to start us off in a direction where it gave the flexibility to the employers to design programs, create partnerships, look at some of the training needs that were critically important to their industry.
After 3 or 4 meetings with our legislative counterparts, we're able to get them to endorse bringing forward a bill. Eventually never passed, which was unfortunate. We got to the last reading in the last house, but it hasn't stopped anybody from wanting to get behind it.
The way legislators hear the message is from the employers. So this is why I keep getting back to we've got to give employers the right language.
In our state, we were fortunate to have a very vocal group of employers that went to our local elected officials and really talked about the benefits of the program. So they did this through emails, through letters. We actually had sessions at the Capitol in Harrisburg to meet with legislators, and we brought along our employers. The Department of Labor and Industry hosted roundtables with both employers and legislators. So we were trying to really make them be on the front end, and to their credit, they really stood up and really made a case for continued funding for this type of partnerships.
Because of how ECLI was designed and the metrics were developed to be accessible to employers and family members and residents, if it made sense, they were able to generate so much activity during legislative seasons where these folks would go and talk to their legislators because they generated excitement about the quality of the program, the difference it's made, the changes they could see. And not only could we see it, but here's the data that says it's really happening.